my goal was to find a way how we can get out of this project without paying billions.
Okay.
And I found a way. I was asked, how do you want to win back the trust of people into the Green Party? What is rewarding is when you see that you can make people grow. We call it the third force. Yeah, that's a big challenge. We have some areas where we are still top notch. And I thought, oh my God, if we defend Europe like this, we will always lose. There's a lot that I've seen in other countries where you can save so much energy. Oh my God, we're still debating the old technologies, and China is already producing the new ones and in a very good quality. And then I said, okay, whatever. Now it's the moment to take over responsibility. Do it. Jump.
Hey, I'm Björn from HiFinder. I'm your host of the podcast, The Hydrogen Leader. In this format, we want to inspire future hydrogen leaders. Please do me a favor and subscribe to our channel. If you like the content, it helps a lot to grow the channel. Thank you very much. Welcome, Franziska Brandner. I'm very happy that you are here in our podcast, The Hydrogen Leader.
Yes, pleased to be here.
As you know, we want to inspire other professionals, in particular in the hydrogen economy, to become a hydrogen leader. And this is why we want to touch upon the topics leadership, personal growth, and also your unique views in the hydrogen economy. I would like to start with a very basic question. Who is Franziska Brandner?
Good question. I'm an elected member of the German parliament from Heidelberg, which is in the south of Germany. I'm a parliamentary state secretary in the Ministry of Economy and also the party leader of the German Greens.
And what are you passionate about?
I'm passionate about, making our economy successful, transforming it into a sustainable, just economy. And I'm also passionate about Europe and being more resilient and being a strong force.
I think you had an impressive career, as you mentioned, also in academics and very internationally. I asked myself whether there was a defining moment in your career which had a big impact on you, where you could say, okay, that really got me going.
There are probably a couple of moments. One defining moment for me was that I lived in New York during 9/11.
Okay.
So that was a moment where I really felt, okay, there's something shifting in geopolitical sense in what do we have to defend. And then the second one, which drove me to go into politics, really was there was a referendum at one point over a European constitution, which was lost in France. And at that time, I really thought that the arguments by the pro-Europeans were really poor. And I thought, oh my God, if we defend Europe like this, we will always lose. So that led me to, becoming again more active on defending Europe.
Politics also.
In politics, exactly.
As you mentioned, you are a parliamentary Staatssekretär, which is a high-ranking position in German ministry. I actually asked myself, how do you get there? You won basically the mandate, the green mandate in Heidelberg. Mm-hmm. Did you receive a call from Robert Habeck, or did you need to apply and then the best one, or you're probably the right person? But how does that actually work in politics?
Yeah, as you said, you need to be a member of parliament. That's why it's parliamentary state secretary. It doesn't exist in so many democracies. It's quite German because our German Bundestag is quite important. It's a strong parliament. So that's why, first precondition is you're a member of parliament. And then second one is, of course, that you're qualified to do the job in the ministry. And you also need to have a personal trust relation with the minister because you work closely together. And yes, so I was in discussion with Robert Habeck and that's then how it becomes. So it's two steps. First, member of parliament, and then second is fit the purpose and be interested and have a good relation.
Yeah. And I could imagine that this is also quite a challenging job, yeah? And speaking about leadership, so you are still one person, but now you are a leader in the ministry as well as a leader of a Green Party. So what type of leadership is required in both roles? Is it the same? Do you have to change?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm I'm having these double hats because we had snap elections. So we have early elections. Usually I would have stepped down, but with the snap elections, we have that rule that you cannot replace people because they get pension, allowances. And so you don't want to have somebody to be quite expensive for the state because of a couple of weeks. So so that's why I have this double function. Okay. But yeah, the leadership is different, of course, in the ministry and with parliament. In the ministry, you need to motivate the people working in the ministry to be innovative, to work together, to come up with the best solutions, to be ready to engage with companies in that ministry, to be able to engage with new technologies, and in parliament to negotiate. So you need a lot of negotiation skills. That's what is key as a parliamentary state secretary, because you need to get a majority for your projects. And as a party leader, there's a lot of leadership in giving orientation on, what's your vision for the country? What do you propose on substance? So it's not exactly the same, and you need to bring the party behind you. Yes. So you need to convince a lot of people.
I saw your passionate speech.
To follow you. Oh, thank you. Yeah. So that's a bit of a different leadership.
And coming to your personal growth, I think. Can you share the most rewarding moment in your career where you say, okay, I did something good here and I'm a little bit proud about that? What would qualify to be really a good thing?
I think a very, for me, rewarding moment was I was fighting for long against Nord Stream 2 and the too high dependence on Russian gas. I was really advocating against and saying, let's not get that dependent on Putin. And during the election campaign 2021, it was always said, we cannot get out of this project because we would have to finance billions and you have to pay for it. And once I got into the ministry, my goal was to find a way how we can get out of this project without paying billions. Okay. And I found a way.
Okay.
So
and what was it?
2 days, we withdraw a specific report without which the project couldn't go on. Okay. And I managed to do that 2 days before the war started. So it was just ready.
So that was an element of power.
That was seriously to have the element of getting the right expertise, being creative about it, think about it, and then find a way to get out of this, still on time. But then there are very small, rewarding issues in my constituency. For example, I stand on marketplaces and then people come to me, students, and they have a problem, and then I can fix it, and I can help that individual to continue her successful life, which is also very rewarding when you see the
personal stuff, right?
Yeah, the personal stuff, and that girl managed to continue her school career because I helped her. Right.
I think I spotted. I think you're a very disciplined, hardworking woman.
Yes.
By the way, you arrived exactly in time today, and I think that one of your growth hacks, how you grow as a professional, are that you intentionally put yourself into new situations outside your comfort zone, and then you swim. And is that true? Is that the way to grow fast as Franziska Brandner?
Yeah.
Really? And do you do this intentionally?
I do go into situations where I know it will be a challenge.
Yeah.
When our party leader stepped down and I was planned to do another job. Right. And then I said, okay, whatever. Now it's the moment to take over responsibility. Do it. Jump. Yeah. Not knowing if everything would work out, but just to say, I know I have basic fundamentals that allow me to do the job. I'm a disciplined person, as you said. I work hard. I like people. So let's do it.
Great. And I think you're now in campaigning, having the job in the ministry, which is quite a lot on your shoulder. And I think your day is probably full of new people, full of speeches, press, so a day full of adrenaline. Yeah. What do you do to come down, to ground yourself? Because I think otherwise it does not work.
I listen to music.
Okay. What type of music are you listening to?
I'm still stuck in the 2000s.
Okay.
And then I have the new music of my daughter,
Okay.
the teenage daughter. So
Right.
that's my mix.
I
I
also
skip
have
some years in
teenager.
between. So I skip, I think, like 10 years of music, but so it's my generation and that of my daughter. So music is really key for me. And then it's being with friends, with my daughter, spending time with them.
Sure. Some say politicians cannot be trusted. And I don't want to go this road today, but I could imagine that in this political arena, it's also not so easy to give trust. So that because you have people searching for the headline or other parties who want your vote, is it hard to trust in the political area? And if yes, how do you protect yourself?
Yeah, that's a good question. When I was getting into the new job of being a party leader, I was asked, how do you want to win back the trust of people into the Green Party? And I said, by trusting the people. And I think that this is really key, that we do trust people, that they want to achieve the best for themselves and for their country. And that my role is to free the way for them to use their maximum potential. And I think that is sort of the role that we need to find. The Greens come from a tradition of civil movements. We always say we don't trust the state. We don't believe that the market will fix it necessarily, by itself. So we trust in citizens, in people to do the jobs, just start. We call it the third force. And I fundamentally believe in that, to say, this is what this country is built on, is that people take on and just start doing something, and that they get together and find solutions.
Everybody has people that one looks up to. And do you also have people that really inspired you to go the extra mile or to go on your political career?
She's a person that's not so famous, but in our state, Baden-Württemberg, she is known. It's Gisela Erler. She used to be responsible in the team of Winfried Kretschmann, who is the prime minister of our state, to develop the policy of gehört werden, of, how do you engage being heard.
Right.
And before that, for years, she built up a very successful company of childcare, a very flexible childcare across Germany for mothers and fathers to work, who are working in a hospital, etc., who have shifts, etc. So she has this very professional economic background, and at the same time a fantastic political skill of seeing what needs to be done to, rejuvenate democracy. And she's so inspiring. She's so smart.
Okay. Coming now to another topic, and I would say women in power. Do you perceive yourself as a woman in power now?
Yeah, probably I am.
Okay.
But yeah, it's for me, the difference was more always being a mother. I thought that this is in Germany still quite makes a difference more than being a woman, actually.
I noticed that you studied also in Paris at the very famous Sciences Po, where Emmanuel Macron and Jacques Chirac also being an alumni. And I ask myself whether you can recall something from the lessons that you had there that you now learn when you are in the political arena is really true and that helps you.
Yeah. Two things. One is that we really learn to assess very fast a complex setting and to read a lot. Like, the job was you get a book, 6 p.m. in the evening, 300 pages, 11 a.m. the next day, you have to write a summary. And at that time, we didn't have ChatGPT to do it. So you really had to read the book. But that was really helpful. It's really helpful to be able, to get to the core. What is it about? What do I need to understand? What are questions? So that is one skill which I'm grateful for. And the second one is that you always had to argue the other side. You never were allowed just to go one direction. You always had to say, you can argue this way, you could argue the other way, and then you had to find a solution. And I think that was very, very useful.
I also do this. I love to negotiate as well, and I always put myself in the other shoe and would ask myself, what would be my strategy?
Exactly.
Right?
And I think that is so useful to have
exactly.
that.
It gives a different perspective. Agreed. So I think you might be able to share also the specific challenges women have when they strive for a leadership role. Do you need to be super tough to get there, or what do you think?
I think women still have to do the extra mile, and more often we do challenge ourselves much more strongly. That we are like doubting if we can do this, and so I think there is still an additional way to go for women, and in Germany, and I think it's a bit German specific. You still get a lot of questions if you're a mother, like, how can you do a full-time job and your poor child? And, seriously, I'm like, oh my God, it's like, do we still need to get this question? Where's a father that gets this question? I don't know many.
Yeah, I watched a video from 9 years ago where you were passionate explaining about women's rights in the US, in the EU. So I listened also to your application speech for the Green Party, and you proudly said that you like the party because there is a real share in power between men and women. But what I found interesting is that you noted, but the men still need to adapt a little bit. So I asked myself, what do they need to learn?
I think, we have, of course, this parity within the party, but there's still also moments when you need to say, okay, is this process really, fitting for, for mothers, etc. So, and do you really accept another point of view? So it's constant.
Okay, so moving on to climate change and hydrogen, I think a lot is happening in the world here. I think last year was the warmest year overall, and we exceeded this 1.5 degree warming limit shortly on the world. I asked myself, did that trigger any decision making in your ministry, or how do you deal with this now?
What is incredible is that passing 1.6 has come much faster than everybody had foreseen, de facto. So it doesn't.
This is not a good thing, is it?
No, it's not a good thing.
Yeah,
it's terrible. But on the other side, we have been working hard to get on the path to our climate goals. Right. So, for me, it's another reason to become better, not only faster, but better.
Okay. And tonight in the US, we have a new president, and he announced that he will exit the Paris Climate Agreement. How does that affect your going green agenda?
Yeah, when they quit the Paris Treaty, I think Europe has a specific role to continue being in the lead with other and many other countries across the world to go the path towards a sustainable, wealth.
And given that you have such an international background, I guess you have also seen, and we just heard about that in the lunch discussion, a lot of good things working in also outside of Germany. So are there any success stories that you would like to bring to the green hydrogen economy or to climate change that we simply can apply in Germany because it's working?
Yeah, I've seen a lot. For example, Germany is not really digitalized in the energy sector.
Right.
So there's a lot that I've seen in other countries where you can save so much energy, where you can go faster on using new technologies because you have a totally digitalized energy system. So I think that is one area where I've been working on to really speed up the process in Germany, and it would facilitate so much.
Okay, let's create a little genie moment where you can make a wish. So if you could implement an impactful policy today for climate change, what would you do?
For climate change, I think I would try to really speed up procedures and processes for all the new technologies and free the space, get them enough capital so that we can start off all of these ideas, bring them to the market, and I'm sure that they will win.
Mm-hmm. And that transitions to the role of Germany. What type of role do we play in green tech in the future also? Do you think that we still can lead, given that China has advanced a lot in that area.
Yeah, that's a big challenge. I'm like, while we are still debating what kind of car to drive, I'm like, the Chinese are producing the best e-cars. I'm like, that's a bit of, sometimes I'm like, oh my God, we're still debating the old technologies, and China is already producing the new ones and in a very good quality. So that's sometimes, as a politician, it annoys me, because I see what's happening in China and other countries worldwide, where I'm like, if we do not go into these innovative new technologies, we will just be left out. And we will not be an exporting nation, but an importing one. So I really hope that we, can be still at the top. There are some areas like small electrolyzers, we have some areas where we are still top notch. And I really hope we can keep us in that position, and where we're no longer at the top, fight back.
I also think that your party or the administration has spent a lot on green hydrogen.
Yeah.
What are the challenges that you see in scaling up?
Yeah. Now, what we have worked a lot on is bringing the different dimensions together, like the infrastructure, the production, the use, the regulation. We have set up this core net for the pipelines within Germany, which I think is a big step. We're working on where we need to import it, which is difficult when it comes to the pipelines. So that's, I think, a challenge that we still have to overcome. We are working on decentralized production, which I think is going forward. And we're working on the industrial use of it in the traffic, like in the transport area. So all of this is moving. But I think market actors are waiting for assurance that this will be also the policy of the next government. Right. They're not investing because they're not sure that the next government will also focus on green steel, for example, or on green chemistry. So I think we will need to have that clarity about the future, so that really actors will invest.
There's one thing that worries me because the AI technologies are scaling up so fast, and they use so much energy because of, are we at risk now that we are eating up the progress that we made in decarbonizing through these technologies because they simply scale up faster?
That's a risk. We have been working on this, by the way, in the ministry, and I'm quite happy. I set up a pilot project on assessing the energy in software and in AI, because usually, on your cell phone you use the app, but you have no idea how much energy was needed to program it, how much is it at use. And this is a very good project where we will get this transparency. So where consumers can decide what kind of software AI application they use, also based on the energy. Because sometimes, you use a lot of energy to improve it by 1%. And then if you say, I give up on that 1%, and then the energy rate is 80% lower, it might be for some consumers that say, okay, you know what, this is actually enough for me. I don't need that 1%. I'm happy to save all of that energy. So that is a lot where we need transparency for consumers to be able to choose.
I think we could go on forever, but I have two closing questions. So, Franziska, I would love to know where you see yourself and also the Green Party in 5 years' time. And if you can share also with audience a message to say, to inspire people to take on leadership roles, what would be the message from Franziska?
I hope to see the Greens in a leading position, in really part of, bringing that force of modernization, of hope, of belief in new technologies into Germany, that we do focus on what we can achieve and do not focus on what we do not want. So that's where I see us, to be that force. And what can I, to be motivating a leader. I think what is rewarding is when you see that you can make people grow, and see how they develop, and
inspires you,
and that, when I see that, I'm like, that was worthwhile. And then they continue to give it to others.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Franziska.
Thank you.
It was very interesting, and thank you for being here.
No, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
You're welcome.